Hey there, family.
Hola!
Time for overtime. Now, here's the deal. We're going to be talking about school start times here today. But before we do that, I want to remind you, because we haven't done this in a while, that we'd love to have you like, comment, if you're new to
Yes,
Brian to
please.
Know Overtime.
Whoa! Whoa! Aw.
You just threw your stuff everywhere. We want you to like, comment, share this discussion to not just continue the conversation with your friends online, but also help spread the word about what we're doing here in this ministry, where we're family coming together as Christians, talking about today's issues from a biblical perspective. So think through that, okay? So, all right. You all right over there? You
Yeah.
just threw all your stuff out over the ground.
Okay, go ahead.
So here's today's topic. State Senator Sandra Williams, who's an Ohio lawmaker, and she actually is from the Cleveland area, she wants to change start times for public schools. State Senator Sandra Williams is calling for classes at public schools to start no sooner than 8:30 a.m. She introduced this as State Senate Bill 218 on Wednesday. Don't I sound official when I say that?
Yeah, it does.
Of course, State Senate Bill
Yeah.
218, Wednesday
And then
last
after
week.
just talking to an astrophysicist, it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
wow, how do you do this?
I'm winning today, sister. So part of the proposed law states, quote, it would prohibit public schools from beginning school day earlier than 8:30 a.m. That means no grade level could start until 8:30.
That's crazy.
So what do you think, Christian? Good idea? Janelle loves it. By the way, you should point out the your coffee stain problem so
guys,
people see
I
it.
spilled
Face the camera.
coffee.
Show them.
Look, see. And it just happened when I walked in with my coffee because I try to carry everything. And then you guys see how I like drop stuff. I got problems. I got issues.
Oh, I spill all the time. I just love that it's a gray shirt, so it's like
Isn't
coffee
that
stain.
crazy?
And you're on video now.
I do like it because when you look at the
Coffee stains or the
No, I
start time?
like the law because it at least acknowledges the physiological needs of sleep for teens. Even as a homeschooler, I have a lot of control and flexibility in my schedule. But it's when I've seen what's going on with teens and sleep, it's made me shift my expectation. Because before I thought, no, like this is the way it should be, and I realized that biologically their bodies change. So I don't know, like you said, if
You found some science on that though, didn't you?
Yes, I
Like
did.
there's
And
actually some
so
research about
there's a
sleep in
great
kids.
TED Talk you cannot watch in the next 20 minutes. You got to wait till we're done. And it's Wendy Troxell. She's a sleep researcher. She has her own teens, and so she kind of shared some personal frustrations with her own teen in terms of sleep, but then realized, oh my goodness, I study this stuff. I should know. And she talked about 1 in 10 teens get 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
1 in 10?
1 in 10. And then she was like, if you think you're like, oh, I'm nailing this, they get it at 8 hours. She's like, that's the bare minimum that they should get, which is a little different with the little younger ones, the tweens. 60 to 70% of American teens live with a borderline to severe sleep debt. And then she said, in terms of how sleep deprivation manifests itself, moodiness, laziness, depression, irritability, and she said a lot of the behavioral tendencies that are associated with ADHD can actually be really manifestation of sleep deprivation.
So maybe I'm just tired all the time. I can't sit still.
But then she also said that around puberty, teenagers' biological clock kind of shifts and melatonin is released later in the day. She mentioned around 11 p.m. Yeah. So I'm just saying it helped me as a mom to be aware at least in terms of things like maybe they need naps like they took when they were 4. That's the thing I'm saying. I like that this is the beginning of a conversation versus shutting it down and saying no, they don't need to start early. Kind of looking.
What's interesting too is you and I have similar parenting philosophies, but it manifests itself in very different ways in our families, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I find it's interesting that our cell phone discussion earlier today,
Yeah.
you're the one that's drawn the hard line, and I'm allowing a little bit more license. And now we're flipping it.
I'm glad you brought that up because then I don't seem like the mean one, like I'm gonna get you kind of thing. Because when you were talking, I was like, how come you don't have the same philosophy? Like, no, I'm the parent. Get over it. I don't care what society's doing. You don't need a phone.
So
You do that with sleep.
So we're either both hypocrites here, or it just shows that you can have a philosophy, a biblical philosophy of parenting, and have it, like the application of it, look very different.
Very different. One example that I kind of go back to, and this is not about sleep, but in terms of philosophy. when I started off with hard lines in terms of education, and it would be, I think the kid was like 8 years old, and I met with our teacher that we're supposed to meet with once a year, certified teacher, and I'm like, he's just not reading when I'm like sitting down to do things when I tell him to in terms of education. And then I said, he's supposed to learn to be responsible. It was something like that. It was years ago. And she said, why don't you use some other area to teach him responsibility and following directions so that you're not imposing it, like, let's say, with reading, and remove the love and joy. And, so what my point is, she taught me there are different ways to teach concepts. It doesn't have to be, no, because I'm making a point and this is what it's going to be. So bringing it back to sleep, I think we have flexibility to acknowledge, okay, there's some physiological shifts and needs in teens. How can we accommodate it? Versus, no, I don't care. This is life, suck it up.
Yeah, and I get that, although my approach is totally different.
Yes.
Where I think the idea of the hard line of school can't start at any grade level before 8:30 is well-intentioned. I think State Senator Williams is well-intentioned. It's based on the scientific research you shared.
Yeah.
But I think it's not feasible economically, it's not wise economically, it's logistically a nightmare for schools.
Even for families, people working, and
it's gonna have wide-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
I'm talking, especially if everybody can't do this, you're gonna have after-school activities get done super late. My son already, with early start times, isn't done with football till 5:30. Take that another 2 hours later. So now they need time to relax and time to do homework. So now you're just pushing back time, and they're gonna go to bed later as a function of reality, even later than they are now. And the other piece for me would be, I understand that melatonin's not released or whatever till later for kids, but there's a life lesson we have to learn. I can't go to my boss here at Moody Radio and say, my melatonin is not released until later, so I can't have the morning show start till 8:30.
Yeah.
He'll say, well, then go get another job. Because the reality of life is, I don't care when your melatonin's released, you need to train your body to sleep.
Yeah.
So I think the right solution is not legislation. The right solution to this is that parents should put their kids to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they're a senior in high school, if they're in kindergarten. For my family, 9 o'clock's the cutoff. At 9 o'clock,
Yeah.
you're giving me your device and you're going to your bedroom. I can't force you to lay down and sleep, but you're gonna have nothing else to do. Go to bed.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about your melatonin. That's how we're gonna get you to school early.
Yeah.
And that's the best solution that's worked for decades. When a parent says, oh, my kid needs to stay up later. No, you're letting them stay up later.
Yeah.
Your kid only does what you let them do.
Yeah.
You see how I'm drawing the hard line on this and you're not? It's interesting how we flip.
Well, I have
positions.
more flexibility. I own my time. You don't. I homeschool.
I don't at all.
I
The bus is
homeschool,
gonna
so I
pick up
could
my
do-
kid at 6:30 in the morning for high school,
Right.
or she's not gonna make the bus.
Right.
So is this a good idea? That's what I wanna know.
Rema says, I know my kid would just stay up later. Callie says, if school is to start later in the mornings, would that mean their school day would be longer? Like 8:35 until 3:30?
It wouldn't, I think what they're saying is it wouldn't be longer, but the whole day would just shift later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So keep in mind that my elementary school kids will start school, I mean, this would work for elementary school scheduling. It'd be like, they get home off the bus around 4:30. That means your high school kid wouldn't get home till 4:30. So activities wouldn't start till 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
2-hour practice or a rehearsal, which is very typical.
Yeah.
7:30. When's dinner? We could talk about healthy eating and the consequence of healthy eating, the consequence of eating too close to bedtime. That's gonna push homework. Everything's later then. And by the way, I mentioned the economics of it. School busing. Right now, they do it in shifts. You go pick up the high school kids, and then you take them to school. Then you use the same buses and drivers. You go pick up middle school, take them to school. Then you use the same buses, go get elementary school kids, take them to school. We'd have to triple the number of buses, triple the number of drivers. There'd be pandemonium with traffic in local communities because of this. Now, who's gonna pay for it? They're gonna raise your property tax.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike says, when I was in high school, I stayed up until 10:30 on Mondays to watch football. Sunday at halftime because that's the only time they showed them, but I was tired the next day. Dakisha, hi Dakisha. She says, I like school starting earlier and getting done earlier.
I'm with you, Dakisha.
Astra says, how about less homework for kids? Amen. My middle school and high schooler both have hours of homework each night. I don't think starting later is a good idea.
No, but see, if part of the state law was we're going to start school later and they're going to outlaw homework, I would be more amenable to this.
Yeah.
Honestly, because then their free time and their family time would probably start at about the same time.
Yeah.
But no, you're absolutely right on
Yeah.
that. Good point.
Teresa, trivia. In the early 80s, we at Barberton High School had the longest school day in the state, 8:10 to 3:25. I went to bed by 9:30 and woke up at 6-ish. Yeah.
And she still went to bed at 9:30.
Yeah.
Well, what about her melatonin? Science says her melatonin's not ready to go to bed till 11.
I'm just telling you what science says.
Well, no, and I agree with that. I'm just saying,
and
like,
what's going on in their body physiologically.
but she found a way to do it.
No, I mean, that's good. Jessica says, I wish we would have been allowed to nap during breaks in our class schedule like study halls. I remember having to manufacture something to do so I wouldn't get yelled at. A 10-15 minute nap would have helped me to just get that extra rest. And it's different than the workplace. You have to ask to do anything. If you need to get a drink, just help you wake up a little bit. It becomes a big ordeal and class disruption.
It's true.
Melissa says, but if you outlaw homework, when do they get all their work done? Are you taking away learning time in school to give them time to get their work finished? So by
Yeah, you are.
doing the really, like for example,
go down a
in
whole rabbit trail
homeschool,
here, but-
learning and homework is all one. There are schools that figure that out.
There's ways to do it, yes.
Yeah, there are ways to do
And
it.
some of the most successful countries with the highest testing rates have the least amount of homework.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother rabbit trail.
But it spills into, like you said, because I know it did for me. I had hours of homework, and it even shifts your sleep time. Because now you're getting home, you got to eat breakfast, and then as a teen, you're going to bed at 11 because you have your homework.
Did you see Mike took a nap in Spanish class?
Oh, Mike. Kristen, good morning. She says teens need the most sleep, but seem to always start the earliest. I agree that teens should start later. When my daughter was in middle school, the bus came at 6:20, which was crazy early.
That is early.
Younger kids seem to get up earlier to start earlier, but by shifting it, it causes sports issues,
right.
work issues, and more for the teens. There are issues with it either way, and I do not think the government should legislate what is a local decision, in my opinion.
Why can't each school district make their own decision for what's best in their community? Because I saw an article, it's a great point, Kristen, because it's talking about rural communities where the district boundaries are exponentially larger than smaller municipalities. The time for transportation takes a lot longer.
Yeah,
And so their times will be pushed even further back by this law.
yeah.
So I think that's a really important point, but yeah, it is the impact of after-school activities. Like if we truly believe in extracurriculars and the arts and such, which I think we do,
Yeah.
you'd pay a huge price pushing back that start time. And then there's even another economic view to take. A lot of people have said, we'll flip around it, have elementary school start early and high school start late. Well, we've already talked about the athletics. What about childcare? If your elementary school kid starts school and my kid starts high school, they're gonna be getting home at 2:30.
Yeah.
2:30.
That's after school activities and the cost and all that.
Well,
yeah.
how are working families gonna have an elementary school finish school at 2 or 3?
Yeah.
We need them to get off the bus after 4.
Yeah. Jessica says, yes, some of our kids don't get home until 1.5 to 2 hours after school is officially out.
And that's why this later start time, while again, well-intentioned, I think is not the best way to solve the problem. The best way is the hardest one for parents, which is be the parent and say, it's time for bed. I don't want to go to bed. I don't care what you want to do. I'm not your friend.
Yeah.
I'm your dad. Go
Yeah.
to bed. I don't want to go to bed.
Yeah.
Dad, everyone else stays up later. If everyone else jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? I say
Sounds
that.
just
Is
like
that terrible?
like a dad.
I bet Len would say that.
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah, so how do you deal with, or do you agree with the early school time that is being suggested for Ohio?
Again, proposed state law would have schools start no later than 8:30.
Yeah. Let me see. Dakisha, good morning. She says, I have one child in school, For homeschooled. My traditionally schooled son spends so much time with school but still comes home with more school to do. In school, he's basically wasting a lot of time. If children really worked in school, you could probably cut the school day by half. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
even my high schoolers, which spend the most time, solid like 4 hours, they're done. 4 hours. Now, you're not including, if you go to the library, go to homes, go to museums, or they're helping to cook or shop. That's all learning activities. But solid schoolwork does not take 7-8 hours. That's part of the issue.
It doesn't, and I understand the logic of that, Keisha, and I agree with you on that. Having been on the other side of it, though, as a teacher, I'll tell you there's not a whole lot you can do about that.
Yeah.
Based on just simple logistics. I mean, I was required by law to take attendance in class. That takes time. It's wasted time for the kids. But you want to know if your child's not in class, and I have to take attendance so that you know. So there's that. We have to logistically feed 600,000 kids over a period of 4 hours, get them in and out of the cafeteria. We need passing time, enough to have them get there, but not so much that not so little that they're running, and not so much that they're causing trouble. You need
that behavior in classrooms can turn a 30-minute, a 10-minute lesson into 30.
You might have half the class doesn't understand the concept and the other half does. Should we abandon the ones who don't get it? No, we got to slow down. It's a waste of time for the ones that get it. But you see how there's logistically with a public school system, there is time that you can't reduce, that you're forced to take. That is a waste. But you can't change it.
My thing, though, is individually as a family, you can look at these things and make your own decisions to have more control. But as a society, to just shut it down and just be like, no, to me, it's like, I want to say it's Einstein, but I don't think it was him.
Probably.
The person that said to do the same thing and expect a different result is insanity. And we're seeing issues with the educational system, with our kids, with anxiety, with homework. If parents were kind of like, it just seems like as a society, we're like, well, it's just difficult. And then we're like continuing to complain about the way it's impacting our kids, our family, Yeah, and I know it's a big conversation, but what are we going to do? Just keep doing it and just keep complaining about it?
I think sensible reforms are necessary in public schools, which is why I applaud Senator Williams, even though I don't agree with her decision. She's trying to make a scientific-based, fact-based, sensible reform in public schools that's going to help the health of children. I get it. I don't think it's a possibility or a good idea, but I understand where she's coming from on this. But this also requires Christian parents looking at all the proverbs that talk about discipline. And it's saying, it's the life lesson that, like, if you got a job and you got to be at the job at 5 a.m., you can't stay up till midnight.
Oh, yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Because it's not healthy. And so I don't care what your melatonin tells you or whatever tells you, or whether you're a night person, go to bed. You know how you teach your kid that? Whether they want to or not. If they have to get up and get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning, you don't change the start time. You change bedtime.
Right.
Go to bed.
And for those who want to hear it and are in a position to do something about it, you don't have to fall into the system if you have a choice. That's like, you don't have to, you can have choices and more control.
Your family's proof of that.
Yeah. And for people that say, well, we don't have enough money, my kids wore used clothes and still do for like forever. So there are things that we lived without to make this possible. And the other thing I was going to say is, Wendy Troxell, the sleep researcher, TED Talk on this topic, she said 8 hours of sleep is the minimum that a teen needs. Minimum in terms of their brain development and hormones and all that. So 10 hours, going to bed at 9 is still an issue. They're still like not getting enough sleep. So I think even individually as a parent, it would be something that I wouldn't just shut down and just be like, well, whatever, this is what we're doing. And
do you see Betty Cuevas?
Brian, the voice of logic. Well, that's good.
See? Now,
she likes you.
To your point though, Janelle, here's where I'm at. Like, if you're to the point where you go, look, my kid needs more sleep, school is too early, we need to change the start time of school.
Here goes the violin.
Okay, I have a better solution for you, because this is a free country. People love saying that, right? Here's the solution. Don't make everybody else accommodate the fact that you can't get your kid to bed at 9. That's fine. You know what you should do? Homeschool your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
You have the freedom to do that. Don't make public school change when you can't put your kid to bed.
That's right.
Do what Janelle's family does. Your kids can stay up as late as they want because you can start school whenever you want.
No, my kids have
I know you don't do that.
bedtime
But
and all of
logically,
that. But I can accommodate. Every kid is different. Seasons are different. There were seasons where I had a kid going through like anxiety issues. I was able to accommodate that. And so we don't do this a lot on the show, but I'm just saying you don't have to be a victim to this. If you're like, yo, I want
right.
differently, you can have control of your time and your children and all that.
And Christians think of others as more important than themselves, by the way. So trying to force an entire system involving millions of children to accommodate your needs is not biblical.
Yeah.
Marty,
Marty
we haven't heard
says,
from Marty
I
much.
believe I would have to side with Brian. We raised 3 sons, and we're now helping with 4 grandchildren. 2 of our sons have served in the military where they had to get up and go to bed when told. They learned how to manage their time and be disciplined. My husband worked a swing shift for many years in a steel factory. It is managing choices of extra activities with what is really important.
Yeah,
That's
well
good.
said, Marty.
Yeah.
Well said.
Bruce says if teachers would change what they're doing in school, they would not have to give homework. And Mike says sports very rarely practiced into evening or weekend years ago.
Well, but sports were also less competitive years ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's another issue.
Parents have
another
expectations now that
Yeah.
all their kids are going to get scholarships and
Yeah.
yeah. Well, hopefully we started this conversation in your life. I think there are ways to apply scripture to this. The Bible talks a lot about discipline. You've got to find a way to do that in your family, I guess.
Yeah.
But I like the research.
Yeah.
If kids aren't sleeping, it's not healthy.
It's not. And it's just finding ways to address that in your own family. And like you said, if it's putting them to bed earlier or whatever it is you got to do.
Be the parent. Go to bed. Put them to bed at 5 in the afternoon.
That's right.
Get a lot more free time. All right, people. Time for us to get out. Like and share this, comment, and we'll see you mañana, as they say.
Hasta luego.
I mean, Mike didn't pick up that in a Spanish class. He was
No.
asleep for that part. But Mike, that's tomorrow.